Hey, this is Derek Jordan. Welcome to the World Fusion Show, where we bring you the leading innovators in world fusion music. Today, my guest is Mark Allan Stone, who is a multi-percussionist playing a number of really cool African instruments. Welcome, Mark Stone, to the World Fusion Show.
Thanks, Derek. Thrilled to be here with you.
Well, this is absolutely fantastic. And the reason I found you is because of a very special instrument that you play and are now a huge fan of. It's called the Array Mbira. And what's interesting, Mbiras are usually, well, tuned in a scale, a certain scale, and somewhat limited because of that. But this is a much wider range, as many octaves, you can play pretty much anything and modulate keys and all that fun stuff. So I really wanted to have you because you play it, and we're going to feature one of the videos that you do. So tell us a little bit, just really quickly, about how you found this instrument.
I found the instrument kind of like how you found me online, and through the work of Bill Wesley, the instrument's inventor. And I was really just immediately taken by it, and reached out to Bill, and I ordered one. And actually, the piece you're going to play is the first piece I wrote for it when it arrived in the mail. But yeah, it's an instrument that I really feel is a blank slate that you can do almost anything on. And as someone who plays African xylophones and traditional mbiras and kalimbas and steel drum and vibraphone and classical marimba, it was kind of a place where everything I had been learning my life up to that point, I could kind of find a way to bring it together in the spirit of your show, to fuse it together on a single world percussion instrument.
Well, it has a great sound to it, the instrument. Anyway, I can't wait to share that with our audience a little later. But I wanted to just ask you a little bit about your background, how you got into music. How old were you when you started? What were your first instruments and inspirations?
My first instrument was the marimba. I was 6 years old, and my neighbor, Phil Schutz, he had MS, and he also had a King George marimba, which is another very special instrument. Only 101 were made for the Chicago World's Fair. And so he had this just gorgeous instrument in his living room, and he never charged my family for lessons. My dad would help him around the house and kind of just trade favors, and I would go over to his house once a week, and he really instilled in me a love of the marimba. I continued to play the marimba throughout my life, and when I got to college, I started to learn more about the roots of the instrument, the fact that marimba is an African word. And I started to become really interested in African marimba and kalimba traditions. And I had the opportunity to go to Ghana, where I studied with the great Bernard Woma, and we're going to play one of his compositions. But yeah, that's how I got into being a musician, a man named Phil Schutz. And marimba and marimba diaspora instruments have always been the center of my musical practice, but I do play other percussion instruments as well.
And like many world fusion composers, and musicians that I have on the show, you are very inspired by improvisation, and as I am. And of course, a lot of my compositions come from that, and as many composers through history have done. So I know you started quite young, and you started improvising when you were pretty young too, right?
Oh yes, improvisation is central. I believe strongly that it's something that we should incorporate more into early music education. And a lot of my ideas around improvisation come from the flugelhorn player featured in our first video, Ed Sarath. He was my mentor at the University of Michigan. He's still my mentor all these years later. Absolutely incredible improviser, and also a music pedagogue. And through Ed Sarath and other teachers as well, the central importance of improvisation has been instilled in my practice.
Well, perfect segue. Let's go to the first video right now. And this is a piece for orchestra that you did, and it was recorded, you said, in South Africa, right?
Yes, this is recorded in Makanda, Grahamstown, South Africa.
All right, here we go. Let's go. Hey, we are back with Mark Allan Stone, and very cool piece for orchestra. There are some luminaries and cool people playing with you in that orchestra. Who would you like to introduce?
Oh, yes, it's a really fun intercultural collaboration with my friends from South Africa and friends from right here in Detroit. And I think it's important to mention that in addition to Ed Sareth on the flugelhorn, you heard Regina Carter on the violin, as well as a legendary South African percussionist, Dizu Platis. And then, of course, that amazing marimba band is led by my friend Joan Lithgow and her organization called Education Africa, doing just tremendous work in South Africa.
Very cool. Now we're going to move on to the feature of this show, which is the Array Mbira. And it's, as you will soon hear and see, it's a remarkable instrument. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so the Array Mbira has 120 metal tines. So in contrast to the kalimba that you'll hear on a later piece, which has 17, which is more standard, or the akogo I play from Uganda has 14. So it has a lot of keys, right? And so a lot to keep track of. But the beautiful layout of the instrument that Bill Wesley developed is in the circle of fifths. And what's great is that the shapes of chords and patterns on the instrument, when you move it around, remain the same from one key center to another. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful sounding instrument. And the layout of the circle fifths is unique. It's very different than, say, the piano or the marimba. Actually, a lot more like steel pans, which I also play.
Right, right. And it has a really great sympathetic resonance. That's something that's very special about it, in the same way that steel pan has that internal resonance.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, by organizing all the octaves together, you get that sympathetic vibration just acoustically. And then, of course, the fifths next to those. Another unique feature of the instrument, all the octaves are laid out together in the same row. And also, Bill Wesley has a lot of experience with electronic music. And so the pickups that he put on it are excellent and really capture all 120 of the keys very cleanly in terms of recording the instrument.
Right. Well, let's go to the video right now. we are back with Mark Allan Stone. And so, was I right? Wasn't that Array Mbira? Very cool. I think so. Anyway, we're going to move on to yet another instrument. This is the gyil. Gyil, which is a type of marimba, balafon from West Africa, in this case, Ghana. And so, Mark, I wanted to ask you, because this piece was written by your mentor, Bernard Woma, and it's quite intricate, and you play it very well. Tell us a little bit about Bernard and this piece.
Oh, Bernard was an incredible teacher, incredible gyil composer and performer, and very experimental in his work. He took the traditions from the Dagara that he grew up with in the Upper West region of Ghana, and he brought those traditions to the stage at the National Theater in Accra. And as a performer on the stage, he was asked to create solo pieces. Usually this instrument is played as an ensemble. So right away, he had to develop new repertoire for the stage. And so I studied the traditional repertoire with him for many years, but eventually I wanted to learn his repertoire too. And it became my favorite repertoire for the gyil because it was designed to be presented throughout the world. And we were fortunate to play together in Germany and in the US. And eventually this piece, actually, what you'll hear now as a solo, we expanded as a gyil concerto, which we played with symphony orchestra.
Yeah, well, concerto is probably a good word for it because it is extremely intricate and polymetric. And you'll check it out. There's a lot going on in this piece for our listeners. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So let's go to this video right now. Hey, we are back with Mark Allan Stone. And Mark plays all these great instruments. But he's also a college professor in Michigan teaching world music. And this next piece that we're going to feature is Mark playing the Mbira, which is a traditional instrument from Zimbabwe and South Africa. So Mark, tell us a little bit about this piece we're going to hear.
Yeah, this is the Mbira Nyunga Nyunga, which, as you said, comes from Zimbabwe and South Africa. I actually began learning this instrument in South Africa in 2010. Actually, Dizu Platis, who you heard in the first video, was my first Mbira teacher. And this is a piece I wrote for my son, Paxton Stone, after he was born. And I wrote it at the University of Michigan Hospital because Paxton was born with a congenital heart defect, and he had to have life-saving surgery at just 10 days of age. And so as part of his recovery from the surgery, I was sitting there for 2 weeks in the hospital, and I had one of these small Mbira with me, and I would just play for him every day and eventually compose this piece while I was at the University of Michigan Hospital.
Fantastic. Well, let's go to this piece right now. It's just another aspect of your many talents on many instruments. Hey, we are back with Mark Allan Stone. Mark, I just want to say thanks so much for coming on the World Fusion Show. It's been just great to have you and share all of your cool instruments and inspirations with our audience.
Oh, it's been great to hear you, to be here with you, and to share my music with all the listeners of this program. I really feel privileged, really blessed to be able to play this music, and want to continue composing in this style. And I'm also writing more about this music. I'm currently a PhD candidate at the University of South Africa, actually writing about my mentor Bernard Woma's music, which you heard on the program today as well.
Well, that's great. And it would be fantastic if sometime we could meet and play together. I would really.
That would be great.
All right. Thanks again. Take care now.
All right. Thanks, Derek.
All right. Hey, this is Derek Jordan. Thanks for joining us today on the World Fusion Show. It's been great to have you. And please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and all that good stuff. Share the episode with your friends. I'd just like to thank our sponsors, Mackenzie Family Charitable Trust, Chris Pratt, Nancy Weinberg, and Ron Dans for their generous support. And as we always say on the show, remember, think globally, listen locally, and support independent music.